All right. And we are back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
The boys are back in town. You know that's you guys are trading places, not trading places, but 48 hours fans, right?
Yeah,
Boys are
right.
back in town.
We're
The
white
MGO
people. We know
Blog
it.
Roundtable crew, Sans. I don't know where is Craig Ross this morning, fellas. You guys know?
Well, I had to. He might be waiting for a link. So if Miz sends him a link,
I
he might go
sent
over
him the
there.
link
Did you?
yesterday. I didn't know that I had to send you the link though as well too until I saw my email. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
whoops.
let's send Craig Ross a link, another link, and we'll
I'll
get him
send it
on.
again.
We'll
He'll
see if he's.
meander in at some
Yeah.
point, right?
You may have to send it by mail. I don't know if you
Right?
Do we have carrier pigeons? Sklar Brothers?
Craig Ross is old. He remembers the bubonic plague.
Appreciate it.
Funny, I mentioned the boys are back in town. This is a complete tangent. I'm introing you guys, and I go off on this tangent. But boys are back in town was exactly what the coach at Springfield High School said to me about Michigan. Why is that relevant? Because the coach at Springfield High School is Aaron Scott's coach. Aaron Scott is the #1 player in Ohio. The coach at Springfield, which I mentioned before, is Mo Douglas, who was the coach at Trotwood Madison, who sent Mike McCray, Mike Shaw, Rion Dawson, Roy Roundtree, Brandon Moore, all these guys who are actually good recruits. I mean, Roy had a great Michigan career, I think.
and Moore got hurt, and
yeah, Mike McCray had a good career, but this dude was sending guys to Michigan routinely when they were getting pummeled by Ohio State. And so as Michigan is back in the state hard, he said, oh, yeah, the boys are back in town. Meaning, yeah, it's an open door over here at Springfield. So I'm actually going to be down in Ohio this weekend, down in the belly to be. So I'm interested to see the reaction, how they're really feeling on the ground down there in Columbus. I can't wait to see that. There's Craig Ross, who joins us in the room right now.
I thought I was fired.
All right, so now I can do the intro, starting with the man who started it all at MGoBlog, Mr. Brian Cook. Brian, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Well, I never know which one to say.
Of course, as we were talking before you came on, we were in the break, and I know Seth Fisher was fired up too because he's a huge Tiger fan and very, very frustrated. Hopefully, you've calmed down from that.
Here's the thing, Sam. I picked up a National League team. I have a National League fandom now because like the Tigers have been so unwatchable. So I became a Mets fan. I actually was a Mets blogger at one point. And like the one team they can beat all of a sudden. Like they got Verlander, they got Scherzer. I'm like down there ready to like cheer on my guys. Like here, it's all you boys now. We're all Mets fans.
That?
And now the Tigers.
Do they do METS Mets? Like
yeah,
no,
they do. And
no, they don't.
They have the goofiest song. If you want to talk about fight songs,
no,
meet the Mets, it's the goofiest, funniest song.
They got the baseball head guy, right? With the
yeah.
Well, and Craig Ross, who makes his entry onto the roundtable, and Venice 902 by 91 says that jacket, Craig, is fire.
Thank you.
Style over there.
I think Dave Nasternak bought me this, so he gets the credit. So anyway, I'm a Guardians fan. They stink as bad as the Tigers this year. So, but I'm used. They've been watchable at least for the last 15 or 20 years, which is better than the Tigers, who've mostly been unwatchable.
Well, fellas, so much to get into this week. Let's just start off first with a critique of Jim Harbaugh that an opposing coach better not ever utter again. He better not ever talk about player development at Michigan. 9 players drafted. Only team, I think it was only Bama and Georgia were better in this draft. Brian, I mean, guys come to Michigan under Jim Harbaugh's watch. They get developed. They go to the league.
Well, I remember when Lou Schoonmaker was a recruit, and I was like, he's just this quarterback from Connecticut or something. And I was like, all right, well, he's getting drafted. It's like a Jim Harbaugh tight end. It's like, all right, well, it's fine. I don't care about his recruiting ranking. He's going in the second round of the draft because that's what happens. Particularly at that spot in general. But and the crazy thing is, if you look at next year's draft, like Michigan has, I think the Athletic just came out with a mock draft. Michigan has 2 first-rounders in that, Chris Jenkins and J.J. McCarthy. Then you have Blake Corum. You have Donovan Edwards, who I kind of think is a guy who will be looked at in the first round next year because he's the kind of guy that the NFL likes as a running back. So you look at the departing talent and you're like, okay, we don't recruit like Georgia and Bama, so this might be a little bit of an off year. Nope. Because you could have more guys go in next year's draft.
Man, it's crazy that you bring up the Athletic. They're talking to someone in the know when they talk about Michigan's draftable prospects, because every year I talk to a couple agents and they'll go over all the draftable guys. And I remember this past year, one of the guys was asking me about Schoonmaker, and he was like, "Hey, man, our scouts are super high on Schoonmaker. They think he's one of the best tight ends in the country as a blocker." And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, that's the part of his game that I felt like needed to come along the most. And you look at the draft, he's a second-round pick. Well, I bring that up because before this past season, they were asking about Chris Jenkins.
Yeah,
like Chris Jenkins, they were talking about Chris Jenkins like maybe he was a draftable guy in this draft. So I mean, the stock for the scouts is very high on him heading into his final year.
Well, and a lot of this is, I think, Ben Herbert stuff, right? Because Chris Jenkins comes in, he's like 260. He's got the bloodline. Well,
that's
I think
234 is listed as a freshman.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's 234, but he's got the bloodlines, right? His dad was an NFL player, his uncle's an NFL player, and then you put him around Ben Herbert, and I think there's 2 reasons that Michigan is on that freaks list that Feldman puts out every year. One of them is they give Feldman all the access he could possibly want. And 2 is that they really do have a lot of guys who are athletic freaks. So you have DJ Turner, who is a 3-star recruit, I think, who shows up at the combine and posts the fastest 40 time for a corner. So Michigan, like Schoonmaker, tested out of this world too. So these are guys who are not big recruits, but by the time they exit Michigan, they are maximized athletically and they are holding their own with Bama and Georgia in terms of combine success. So yeah, I think Ben Herbert has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, it's why I don't get too really worked up over recruiting ratings, especially in the Harbaugh era, because they have been able to find kids who have upside, and they've been able to develop that upside. And so, yeah, it's nice to get 5-star guys, and we all want them, or high 4-star guys. But the truth is, Harbaugh and this staff has been really good at finding guys under the rocks, sometimes well under the rocks, who've worked out. Guys like Haskins, our wide receiver who I'm blocking on, who went in the 7th round. I think will be a good NFL player. Yeah. I mean, those guys were guys outside of the top 1,000, outside of the top 1,500. But they saw the upside in him, and the upside panned out. And Herbert has a lot to do with that. But yeah, so I mean, I agree.
It is nice to have Will Johnson around. Like,
it's great to have Will Johnson. I'm not saying it isn't.
And JJ and Blake and Donovan.
Right.
There you go. Shout out to Will.
Yeah, it is great, but I don't think you necessarily need to panic. Or fans need to panic if they see a guy who's a 2-star guy. Well, most of the time there's been some reason for it.
I'm going over this class, and there are guys like you can't fake things at cornerback. Now, DJ Turner is very interesting from a Herbert perspective because that's a guy that Georgia passed on. He was playing at, was it Gwinnett, or he was playing one of those.
So. His entire secondary went to college.
His entire secondary was going to SEC schools, and they were going to move him to safety. And people were like, "Oh, I guess if you're moving him to safety in high school, I guess he doesn't have the speed." So he went to IMG to get away from a stacked secondary, and everyone read that as, okay, he's not fast. I think we comped him to Brandon Watson based off his recruiting profile because we're like, this is what a guy looks like when he, can't run. And then that guy goes out and puts a 4.28, was it? Or
4.26.
Was that him
Yeah.
or was that Perry? Because I thought Perry was the guy in that class who we thought couldn't run.
Well, he
Perry was the other guy in that
believe
class we
his-
thought couldn't run.
I believe his verified time was something like 4.67. So
Okay.
you gotta give. This is maybe the best example of physical development that Ben Herbert can put forth is DJ Turner, because he fixed DJ Turner. DJ Turner, for the better part of his high school career, had a serious. He had a glute issue that couldn't be. I mean, it was what hindered him. He was always on the training table, never full speed. He got to Michigan. He was balling out in fall camp his freshman year. I remember hearing about it, and then they get to the season, he's not on the field. It was his glute again. It bothered him for a year and a half at Michigan, and he got into Herbert put him into some kind of regimen, so stretching and strengthening. He figured out what the issue was, and he fixed it. And when he fixed that glute problem, this dude, his speed was off the charts. So if you want to see a tangible example of the impact of Ben Herbert, I give you DJ Turner.
Well, and then, I mean, you got Mozzie, you got Jenkins, you got Aiden Hutchinson, who, committed to Michigan as a 3-star and was blowing up his entire senior year, but he went from, a pretty good prospect to the number 2 pick in the draft. Like, at this point, I think he's the highest paid S&C coach in the nation, and he should be. Like, do you know how nice it is to have nobody in the Michigan fan base complaining about strength and conditioning?
Yeah,
Remember,
that's true. Remember when
there were
nuts
wars about Mike
Gittleson?
Gittleson. There was like the story about the guy, the lineman who had to wake up at midnight and eat a whole pizza, and I was like,
Pat Massey, right?
well, I don't remember.
I think
don't
it was
remember who
Pat.
it
It was Pat Massey, and yeah, like they were trying to bulk him up into defensive tackle.
Yeah,
when
the
he was
6'8" defensive tackle.
There was bounced off of Vince Young.
There were more issues than Gittleson.
Oh God, I hate to bring that up about Pat Massey, but every time I hear Pat Massey's name, I think about the Rose Bowl and Vince Young shaking off his tackle attempt. Like, damn it, that was the game.
That was the game, but that was Vince Young, so he gets a graded on a
pass.
curve for that one.
Aiden Hutchinson might have missed on Vince Young as well. It's,
right.
But I mean, back to it, like it's like there has not been a point in my Michigan fandom where there has not been at least one lunatic posting over and over on a message board about how Michigan strength and conditioning is a total disaster. And this era of Ben Herbert is long may it last.
Yeah. He's the real deal. Highest paid in the country for a reason. I mean, deservedly so. He absolutely gets it done. And I think back to your point, Craig, I think, coaches have to earn, or at least from fans, when it comes to how they react to recruiting rankings, have to earn the benefit of the doubt. And these guys, they have certainly earned that. Especially at the positions like offensive line. You should never question Michigan's O-line evals. You should never question their tight end evals, right? I mean, they just knock those absolutely out of the park. And I'd argue, with the corners that they developed, because I didn't mention Steve Clinkscale. Steve Clinkscale had a lot to do with it as well, because the glute issue was fixed before Clink got here, and DJ Turner was still on the bench. And so he was able to get more out of him as well. They have just really rounded out this staff fully. And that's why, when you see Michigan guys hit the portal, they're depth chart guys. They're, backups like RJ Moten or their third string or beyond like the other guys. Meanwhile, you flip over to Michigan State, fellas. You got starters. You got starters jumping in the portal. What do you make of Peyton Thorne jumping in the portal and leaving? Keon Coleman in the portal. He seemed like he made official his departure yesterday. I know the Brantley guy, the corner, he decided to come back, but seems like everything isn't rosy up in East Lansing these days, fellas.
No, I bet what happened with Brantley is like, I'm the starting quarterback on a Big Ten team. I'm going to go see if there's any interest in me. And people were like, we saw your secondary last year. No. So
the interesting thing about Brantley is when he left, many Michigan State fans were like, he's worthless.
Yeah.
He's worthless. We don't need him. Yesterday, he became Charles Woodson. All of a sudden, Brantley is Charles Woodson after the day before, he wasn't even anyone they were considering. I found that somewhat amusing.
I mean,
But
it's
Peyton
bad.
Thorne, I think, is a good player. I mean, he's not great, but he's a good Big Ten quarterback, and that's to me a real loss for that program. And Keon Coleman's obviously a loss. So.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
thought Coleman was a little bit of a one-trick pony last year, but that's a good trick. Like
Yeah.
Michigan had to double him in the second half, and they were able to do that because they didn't have anything else. But I mean, the portal gaveth to Mel Tucker, and now it's takeneth away. And the post-spring departure of starters is like, that's a 5-alarm fire. Because like, if these happened immediately after the season, you're like, all right, it just wasn't working out. But to go through spring practice and then decide to bail is kind of like, I think they might have seen what was happening with this team, and they're like, I don't want to be on a 3-9 team.
Yeah,
I'm
mean,
really-
Peyton Thorne's going to like Auburn, right? So
That's the word. Was that official? Is that official?
I don't know. If it's
There's
official.
it's rumored, but not official.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah,
His
but
is really interesting to me, Seth, and pick up on this because I know you do a lot of the opponent previews. They've been talking like the Kim guy, what's his name, Noah Kim, like he's better than Peyton Thorne, and like it's a real battle, and he might beat Peyton Thorne out. And I'm looking at the guy be a multi-year starter. The year before, looking like one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. No, he had a great running game, but that guy went from a hero to a bum seemingly overnight in the eyes of a lot of Spartan fans. Is that just convenient?
Yeah,
or is Kim really supposed to be that good?
Spartan fans want to be like they want their team to be consistently good, and Peyton Thorne, the problem with him is he throws a great deep ball. Like if it's going to just be him and Keon Coleman, like that's your best chance to beat Michigan. It's just you remember like some of the throws that he beat us with, like at 4th and 6. That
Yeah,
they got
beautiful.
Yeah, he throws a beautiful deep ball. It's very catchable. It's right on target, and everything else is terrible. He doesn't really read anything. You can't put you can't put a lot of things on him pre-snap, and I think Thorne had something to do with it too because he gets into spring practice and they're like, "You're going to compete with this guy." And there's also Captain Hauser coming up, who I think they got a pretty good. I think he was a pretty good recruit.
No,
so they have other.
Like
Thorne does not want to compete for his job that he's had for 2 years.
Their spring game, it was clear that Peyton Thorne was their starter.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a big gap between him and the other two quarterbacks. Like he was not really competing for a job. He had the job, and he was out.
Isn't that mysterious then? I mean, assuming, as I assume, that Thorne was the definite leader and the almost certain starter, unless he blows up at the badly at the beginning of the season, why is he leaving?
Because they're a bad team.
I mean, maybe that's it.
Nobody's a better scout than I mean, you know this. When you play someone in basketball, is the best way to tell how good of a basketball player they are, right?
Yeah, that's true.
No one's a better scout than someone you play with. You know the guys you play with better than anybody. So he's looking around, and Keon Coleman's doing the same thing. They're looking around at this team, and they're going, what are we going to do this year? And I mean, it's the same thing that Deion Sanders did when he inherited a Mel Tucker roster, right? He looked around at the talent that they brought in that was sitting around in Colorado, and he goes, I got to get rid of all of this. So,
well, I mean, I think one factor may be that he just was getting like lit up in practice. I guess they don't make quarterbacks live, but it's possible that their offensive line is just going to be a sieve this year, and he's like, I don't want to put myself through that.
It's been a sieve the last 2 years.
I know. Maybe he's just sick of being like completely crushed in the pocket.
Yeah.
Or maybe he feels like, man, disrespected more by the idea that this is a competition than he is the fans kind of saying, he isn't that good. I mean, Mel Tucker was very out there saying, hey, this is a wide open thing. And I take that different than I take, Jim Harbaugh saying that with Cade McNamara. He had J.J. McCarthy behind him. And these guys behind Peyton Thorne don't look like J.J. McCarthy to me.
No, they look. I mean, Kim had a couple of cameo appearances last year where he looked kind of mediocre, like Illinois quarterback level, not Michigan State quarterback level. And Hauser, just people are trying to start the hype train there, and it just seems like he's just not ready yet, if he's ever going to be. But yeah, I think you get a lot of spin out of the certain Spartan sources, and so they're saying like, these guys, blah blah blah. They're just trying to keep in with their program and like get whatever like coaching talk they can get. So I feel like they are. I mean, this is pretty much a 5-alarm fire for Michigan State. And they signed Mel Tucker to a bazillion-year contract that's entirely guaranteed like 2 years ago. So, and their recruiting class has 4 guys in it, like one of whom, and their best recruit is definitely going to decommit. Like nobody expects them. They got 4 guys in their class. Like
their coaching staff is also bolted too, and I think that might be part of it. I don't know if that's part of it at the quarterback, but like Coach BT was like the thing, right? And Michigan was getting 5 stars to come visit here because they were on their way to Michigan State to go and train with that guy. You knew he was going to get picked up by an NFL team eventually. The Seahawks did pick him up. So, that was Brandon Jordan, I think his name is. Like, he was a great trainer. He was a guy that like NFL players were coming to work with. And that put Michigan State on the map for a while. And they had a lot of guys, if you look at their 247 profiles, who visited Michigan State, it's like a who's who on the defensive line. And it's all because they were going to visit that guy. They also lost their other defensive line coach too. So I think that like the staff there too is just taking a big step backwards. And what was the other thing that Michigan State had? They had Coach PT and they had NIL. They were going to be offering people compensation on the same level as SEC teams. That was going to be the promise, right? We're going to play the game as well as anybody else, and I respected that. That's what you should be doing. But when you're offering money and people are coming to you for money, they can leave for money as well. So if somebody's looking at Keon Coleman and saying, I really need a receiver, and if Keon Coleman came up from, I forget what town he is in Louisiana, but it's one of those it's one of those fun names to say, right? And he's coming up from Louisiana because he's going to get paid by Michigan State, and then someone else is going to pay him more. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's right. The interesting thing, I don't know if we mentioned it, was the FOIA. Michigan State lost their FOIA case, and they didn't want to reveal where Mel Tucker's money was coming from. And what they were trying to do was kind of pretend it was coming from Matt Ishbia and another donor. And it turns out it's mostly not. Of the 95 million, 71 million is guaranteed by Michigan State. So they're really, they're going to live or die with Mel here. And because they're not really, at least in the next year or two, the next few years, they're not really going to be in a position to go in another direction. Because this money is school guaranteed.
Yeah, it's
Opelousas. He's from Opelousas, Louisiana.
It's farcical. Listen, watching Michigan State fans talk about Mel Tucker being on the hot seat. It's like
he's not delusional. Yeah, no chance.
He owns the hot seat.
Right. I mean,
if the seat's hot, he can just change the setting on the seat.
Yeah, he can't. Yeah, they can't get rid of him because there's just too much money there, and then they're going to have to hire another guy. No, for another whatever it is, 8, 9, 10 million a year ain't happening. He's there. I mean, no one has ever been more secure at this moment than Mel Tucker.
Yeah, I think you just made a great point, Seth, that I want to seize upon because we talk so much NIL. We're going to talk it with Hunter, who made it official.
Yeah,
that he's out of here. I think NIL has a lot to do with that. You need to have good NIL. Michigan's made some progress. They need to make more. But to your point, Seth, if that's the reason you get a player, very easy to lose them for that. It's like marrying a mistress. You lose her how you got her, right? So it's one of those things where you gotta kind of be careful with when you talk about NIL, where you place it among the factors that lure players in. If it's the factor, then in the age of roster volatility, that's another factor that'll really lend a lot to it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a program culture, right? Like Michigan seems to have a pretty good program culture, and Michigan State right now doesn't seem like they have it.
Yeah, no doubt. Feeling really, really good about the Maize and Blue. Feeling really, really good about the recruiting class, #1 in the country, and they are not done. It feels like the train is picking up steam as they head into late spring and then into the summer months where going to have a lot of big time official visitors coming up in the month of June. This is just, fellas, I think I may have asked you this before. Do you think Michigan will have a top 5 finish? Way things are trending, I feel more and more like you should bet on that. You should bet on the top 5 finish because there are more top 247 guys on the horizon. Just let me let you know that. So,
Well, I mean, linebacker recruiting. I just updated our board, right? And this is just based off of like the stuff that you guys can put out for free, and it's like very different names and very different feeling of how we're doing. Like all of a sudden, Childs and Beasley seem like they're in the class, and they already have Curtis, and there's like I think 3 or 4 other guys. It looks like they have a really good shot at. That wasn't the case a couple months ago.
yeah, Free Press headline yesterday. We'll get to a break. It said, "Why does it feel like Michigan State is falling farther behind Michigan?" I said, "Feels like." What do you mean feels like? That's kind of like that's what's happening. More and more by the day, they're falling farther and farther behind, which is great to see, great to feel, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with those Sparties. We need to get to a break. When we come back on the other side, a little bit about Hunter, but we're going to get over into some hockey. Is something that we anticipated would happen, did happen. Billy McCall decided to leave the program and speaks to me that it wasn't with a definite destination in mind. So we will tackle that. We'll return here on the Michigan Insider MGoBlog Roundtable, Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket.
Clear on radio.
Sam, how are you on the Lions draft? I sat with Ira in the softball game on Saturday, and he said you just did not like this draft. And I'm sort of stuck between Scylla and Charybdis. So one of my good friends who's a lifetime Lions fan just hated this draft and metaphorically wants to have Holmes drawn and quartered. And another, my law partner, Kent Weichman, loved the Lions draft, thought it was really creative and really made complete sense.
So I mean, my response is a nuanced one. I like the players they got. I don't like where they got them.
Okay.
In the first round. I mean, to me, I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's a terrific player. I like the plan that they're putting forth. If I'm going to take a running back, I wasn't in favor of until I realized they were going to trade DeAndre Swift. Then take the best running back. You could have taken the best running back in the draft at number 6. Why are we trading down to number 12 to do that? Right. Yeah, and then at 18, we talked about Jack Campbell. I've been talking about Jack Campbell for weeks. Like I was looking at him being a pick for the Lions in the 2nd round.
Right.
But picked him for Michigan for the Lions pick too. He was like the most Lions guy in the draft. Like everyone knew
Jack
the Lions were going to take him.
I think Jack Campbell's going to be a good pro. Yeah. Is he going to be an every down linebacker? Remains to be seen. But you got Kalijah Cansey right behind him.
I would have taken, I mean, to me, I just would have gone defense. What would have been so terrible about taking the Tyree Wilson and then Cansey? It's shoring up the biggest problem on the team.
Yeah, I like the Brian Branch pick. That was a terrific pick in the 2nd round. I'm hoping that Sam. Look, I'm just in general, I'm against taking tight ends in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. Yeah. Sam Laporta might wind up being a guy, and I kind of amended that because the Lions had 3 second-round picks. To say, hey, if you want to take a tight end somewhere in the 2nd round, fine. Once you fill the other needs, they took him with the first pick in the 2nd round. Like, all right, it's just the slotting just seemed off to me. But they got guys who I think all those guys will help them. Now, how much remains to be seen. So
yeah, I just don't know. But I mean, look at it this way. Assume Gibbs is equal to DeAndre Swift. If that's true, if they're basically the same guy over the short to near term, midterm, then what you did was trade the 1-6 for Laporta, who was probably not even the best tight end in the draft.
Well, Holmes kind of talked about it. He said they thought they'd be able to re-sign Jamal Williams, and they learned the hard way that you can't count your chickens for their hatch. Yeah. And so DeAndre Swift is in the contract year. If he has If he does what guys do in the contract year, right?
Yeah.
Now you're going to be on the hook for a big contract with him after you just paid David Montgomery a lot of money. So the logic was sound for taking a running back, realizing they were going to trade Swift. I just don't know why if you got a chance to take the best one, why don't you just take the best one? So anyway, I know Brian, his ears are bleeding. Listen to us talk Lions. So.
Talking NFL draft. Hey, Brian's ears bleed a lot. That's
here's what. So people want to know. Scott said he asked this question 5 times, so or seems like it. So I want to get it to you guys. Zach Marshall, you guys think he sees the field this year?
Not me. I mean, he
4 games. He'll get his
what?
4 games.
Just 4
He'll
games.
get his 4 games because that's what they do with those guys. He and Tony Elliott. Don't sleep on Tony Elliott. I started watching some of his film too, and they got a couple good guys at tight end. But Marlon Klein's coming up. You're going to see him starting work into because he took a red shirt. They're going to use Hibner a lot more this year. They still Bredesen. They got Barner. They got Loveland. They have tight ends.
Yeah, Colston. I sat down for Colston for one of the behind the uniform deals, and he was like, "Listen, Matt Hibner is the fastest guy we have in the room. It's not close." He's like, man, that dude can run.
Yeah,
really, really run. And so, I hope to see it. Hope to see it on the field.
I'm watching the TCU. I'm UFRing the TCU game this week because of Hibner. Because I have no data on Hibner, and I went and I started to go look at that guy, and I'm just like, I gotta, because I knew he played a bunch in the TCU game, and he's had a couple good plays so far. So, yeah, I can see it now. I was having a hard time finding it before.
Yeah, they're loaded at tight end, so I don't I don't see Marsh. I mean, like you say, he might get his 4 games and probably will, but beyond that, I don't see it.
So Brock Bowers might be, are there exceptions? To me, Kyle Pitts was an exception to my tight end rule. He's not like a typical tight end. And Brock Bowers is not Kyle Pitts, but he's also not your typical tight end. Like, he's better than TJ Hawkinson ever will be. Like, that's what I mean. Your typical tight end. Sam Laporta is your typical tight end. If you give me an atypical guy, then I might amend that. But, generally speaking, you look at the NFL, the best tight ends are 3rd round or later. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you have taken Mike Meyer anyway? Doesn't he have a greater upside?
He can't block. I mean, you got to teach if you're going to be the Lions and you're building your whole team around the fact that you run the ball, because Goff is Goff. He's going to be so good at quarterback, but he's not going to carry your team, right? The running game carries this team.
Look, I told you guys back then when it was reported that a deal was signed, that it wasn't signed. That they were something they were going to keep talking about. I have not heard that a new deal has been signed yet. So
he's talking about
coming back on
question about Harbaugh's contract.
Right.
Back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back folks, here on the Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Before we get back into it, Wolverine weekend, folks. Gotta let you know, if you love Michigan, you want to be at Grand Traverse Resort and Spa June 9th through the 11th for an outstanding 3-day event. It starts out June 9th with the Woodson whiskey tasting up there. Now, Charles won't be there, but the spirits will be there and they'll be flowing. A lot of great camaraderie. Maize and Blue style. Saturday is the dinner event. You're going to have 4 Michigan players on hand. You're going to have Will Johnson and the turnover buffs. You're going to have Colston Loveland. You're going to have Junior Colson. And, of course, Donovan Edwards is signed up for it as well. And this is an NIL event. So you guys have seen Monday Morning Quarterback, right? Well, imagine Monday Morning Quarterback in front of a live audience with us breaking down plays with the players themselves. And with you having an opportunity to ask those guys questions along the way. That is the dinner program Saturday night of Wolverine weekend. Then the Sunday on the 11th is the golf outing portion where you get out on the course. There'll be the meet and greet with the players and photo ops. And, of course, we'll be driving around the course, meet and greeting all the different folks. So if you love golf, if you love Michigan, this weekend cannot be beaten. June 9th through the 11th, Wolverine weekend. Go ahead and get signed up at grandtraverseresort.com. Again, grandtraverseresort.com. Fellas, just real quick, because we have already talked about the Hunter Dickinson topic, but he made it official that he's out with his message on Twitter last night. Said, hey, he hopes people understand down the line, but he is going to announce his decision today. I think it'll be Kansas or Kentucky, but post-mortem on Hunter's decision, Brian Cook, his legacy, fans' feelings about him, where you think he'll wind up.
I mean, it's disappointing, I guess. His, career at Michigan kind of ended with a bit of a thud. And, the team around him wasn't great. But I feel like he's got a limited window to cash in, and he wants to cash in, and that's okay. Like, but his legacy at Michigan is not what it could have been, and if that's something that matters to you, then I don't think that's something. This is a move that you make. But he's got different priorities, and I think he's always been kind of wired that way. And we loved it when he was a Michigan player, and now we get the flip side of that.
Yeah, I have no bad feelings about Hunter at all, really. I wish he would say, and I think this might be Hunter-like, he would say, I'm probably not going to be in the NBA. I got 2 years to play. I need to make money now for my future. And so I'm just getting more money at wherever I'm going than what I can get at Michigan. And I hope people appreciate that. I would say, yeah, I get it. Do it. And I would have a higher regard for him if that's the reality. And I assume that's what the reality is. But in terms of Hunter at Michigan, I don't have any bad feelings about that. He's really sort of carried us to the extent the team the last 2 years needed it. He did.
Seth?
Yeah. I mean, I learned long ago that you got to treat gifts for what they are. If you don't get a gift, you don't get mad that you didn't get a gift. You get a gift, you're happy that you received it. I'm happy for what we got from Hunter Dickinson. Is he going to be one of the guys who's, is number one going up in the rafters? Hell no.
No.
Right? And could that have been the case? Yes. And there are not a lot of guys who get that opportunity to be that meaningful to a school. But that's not the only thing that matters in life. And maybe it matters to some guys. Maybe it doesn't matter to other guys. It was a gift that we had him for when we had him. He's going to get paid. I think it's a good thing in general that players do get paid and he's going to, he's a value. He's worth, was it $1.5 million a year is what they're talking, like $3 million total for 2 years. Like, I don't know if that's the real money, but because they always lie when those numbers come out, but he's worth that value to somebody and somebody's going to pay it. I do wish that Michigan's NIL situation was such that we could match anything anybody put forth. I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's going to be the case. It's not the way that Michigan wants to do things. I understand it. But we have a good thing here, and it would be great if we could just get to the point where, hey, if money's the problem, we've got money. So let's make it about everything else. And we're not really there. So go get paid, Hunter. I appreciate everything we got from you. And sorry that we couldn't give you more.
Yeah, the dude, he doesn't seem interested in burning bridges on his way out the door. All the more reason, in my opinion, to return that same energy on his way out. I agree. His number one being the rafters, but he isn't this pariah. At least to me, he's not a pariah either. And be interesting to see where he winds up. I tend to believe the $3 million is an embellishment, but do I believe that Kentucky and Kansas are offering big dollars? Yeah, that's pretty easy to believe.
On your way out, you gotta I always consider myself a Michigan man. Well, then you'd stay. He did what he did, and to sort of still claim this mantle, it rubs me the wrong way. You made your decision, bro. Just go. I don't need the flowers on the way out. I need you to score buckets. I don't need you to make a kissy face at me as you leave the door. So just go. Do not darken my doorstep with this flowery language.
You know,
I I think
it's
it's fine. He is. He's a Michigan guy. He's a Michigan alum. All right.
Ah,
so wait. You know what? Here's the thing. Just go. This is a great segue. That's what Billy McCall decided to do. He decided to just go, and it wasn't. I mean, he's gonna get a job. He's gonna work somewhere. I listened. You know, even I know what Billy McCall brought to Michigan hockey. So he is going to be an in-demand coach. But it was noteworthy to me, Brian, and I wonder if it says anything to you that he left before there was a known place or spot that he was leaving for. Even if we expected his departure, what do you make of Billy McCall's the announcement of Billy McCall's leaving the program?
well, you get passed over for the head job by a younger guy who's been on staff less than you have. And that's just not a situation that most people are going to stand. And I think that his departure was a foregone conclusion, and just because he hasn't found a landing spot yet doesn't really mean a whole lot. He will find a landing spot. He was terrific as the head coach, and maybe the GM of a BCHL team. He did a lot of great work at Michigan, and I think that an NHL head coaching is maybe on the horizon for him. Not now. I think he might be an assistant in the league for a while, but I think he's got that capability. I think he's an excellent coach. And I think Michigan will be worse without him. I mean, Naurato should still be able to recruit, but it's disappointing because I'm sure that one of McCall's professional dreams was to be the head coach of Michigan hockey, and that doesn't seem like it's going to happen for him. So I understand the disappointment there. I understand why he's leaving, but it is a situation where you wish that you could keep them both.
If it's true, I wish, and I have a high regard for Naurato. If it's true, I wish he would say, and I don't think he has, but maybe he hasn't had the opportunity, but I wish he would say, losing Bill McCall will be a big loss to Michigan, that he did something that was unusual. He hung in here for a year in difficult circumstances for him on a personal level. He allowed this sort of transition from Mel to me to happen in a logical way. And I would hope that Naurato at some point would come out and just really thank him for that. I think losing McCall, from what I gather, he's a really good recruiter, and he's really been a major part of bringing the talent into Michigan, who's been here. And I also think, as Brian does, he's been a good coach. So I think this is a real loss for the program. I think he's going to be hard to replace.
I mean, I'd like to keep Cade McNamara too, but
I hear you.
The fact is that he entered the portal, and he's going to get picked up because he's a good coach. It's a little weird because college hockey doesn't necessarily cross over that much. I know that you can go to Minnesota State and get your head coach if you're Wisconsin or something like that, but a lot of times there's just you kind of recruit inside the program for your coaching staff, and obviously Michigan's done that, and the other schools have done that too. So it's tighter than you think it would be for a guy like him. Plus, everyone's already got their coaches in at this point. It's May 4th. You're going to have your head coach for next year already in place. But he couldn't do it again. And if he didn't step out on his own, then no one was going to say, "Oh, this guy's available right now. Let's go get him." They were going to say, "Oh, this guy, he could end up coaching in Michigan again next year." And the longer he does that, the more he looks like the guy who got passed over by Naurato. It's the best thing for his career. Again, just like Hunter, be happy that we got what we got. You're not supposed to be able to get that. It made the transition better. He recruited well. It doesn't seem like a bunch of Michigan hockey players are leaving because he's leaving. Everyone expected this. Everyone understands this. And he's a guy that you wish well. You only have one head coach in Michigan available. Now, if Naurato sucks from now on, then you can turn around and be like, okay.
So this is an unfair question, and I'm stipulating that before I ask it. But I wonder, even with it already, the fact that Brandon Naurato was a good hire, that's already been adjudicated. He was a good hire. They went to the Frozen Four. That was a really, really good move. But That being said, for anyone, Billy included, who feels like he was treated unfairly, getting passed over, do they have a point? And why am I asking that? Because clearly there's a contingent within the Michigan family that feels that way. We can listen to John U. Bacon to know that. So is that legit? Is that feeling legitimate, Brian?
I just think it's a tough sell given what's in that report. And I don't think that he was the source of any of that stuff, but he's not standing up to it. And I just think that's a real difficult thing for a university in 2023 to overlook. And that's why I think his next move is probably an NHL assistant. And I don't necessarily think that he's a bad guy or did anything wrong. It's just you have this situation where the report's out there and no action has been taken for years. And I think that Ward is sort of blindsided by the reaction to it. And so it's just politically difficult to give him the job. And I'm sure that all the old hockey heads who are like, this behavior is what hockey is like. I mean, it's just how we do it. Think it's a silly and a stupid reason not to give a guy a job. But that doesn't mean that they're right and we have to listen to them. Like the kind of like, we have to break you down to build you up again thing from the 80s and stuff, like that led to a lot of bad things. Like it led to Dr. Anderson, right? That sort of attitude about, oh, we need to toughen you up and this thing isn't important and it's not a big deal. Like, I just don't think that's a tenable way to run a program, and it shouldn't have been, and now it's not. So
yeah, I mean, we don't know. McCult wasn't in charge, and I don't think really know what his attitudes were or what he did in relation to Mel and the problems in the hockey program. But I tend to agree with Brian, is that we should have some indication that he was more proactive, that he was more vocal, saying, no, wait, this has to stop. And, we don't have any indication of that. Now, maybe he talked to Mel and said, hey, wait, this has to stop. And nothing happened. I don't know.
I mean, after Red left, he had it was set. Everyone knew what was going to happen. Mel was the guy. They looked at other people. They did their homework or whatever. But when Red retired, Red had been here a long time. He'd established the program. It was Red's program. It was going to go to Mel Pearson next. Billy McCall understood that Mel Pearson was next in line, and then Billy McCall was next in line after Mel Pearson. It's just like when Bo left, you knew that Gary Moeller's in charge, and then Lloyd Carr is the next guy. You wouldn't just go out and get Cam Cameron and put him over Gary Moeller at that point, right? You're going to go down the list, and the list was set. And the school, I think, is correct in not honoring that. I think it's good that that you leave, a succession plan after you, but that is not written in stone. That is not, and the school cannot get tied to that. And we had a change in circumstance. We had a report. We had a situation where Mel Pearson had to get fired, and that changed things. And I think that it sucks for Billy because I don't think that it's not like the report says you can't hire this guy. It's a very vague situation. But circumstances change. The school has to follow the circumstances. They can't just follow the plan. But I think a lot of people spend a lot of time preparing the plan, understanding the plan, letting opportunities pass by because that was the plan. And now they're upset because they were on track and now the track's gone.
Yeah. Real quick, guys, with the few minutes we have remaining, Ira told me, you had the hockey convention, and he said one of the proposals that was brought up at the hockey convention, home venues in the postseason. So I was just wondering, were you guys at the convention? I mean, it seems like a MGoBlog thing that they were doing down here.
But did you hear the other thing that happened at the convention?
Yeah, I heard that one of the coaches tried to assault.
Yeah,
You assault the
Yeah.
Michigan
Or did assault him.
or did
Yeah.
assault. Right.
yeah, it like took a swing at a guy because it's Rico Blasi's staff, so it's not like I'm surprised. But yeah, so Michigan gets Josh Ernest out of St. Thomas, who is a freshman who is their second leading scorer, and like they're not happy.
But
so-
what is he going to expect? I mean, you're St. Thomas. If you've got decent players at St. Thomas, they're probably not staying there if Michigan or Minnesota or Wisconsin or Michigan State or anybody else is interested.
Now,
So-
did they give out
Yeah.
matching minors for this? Because I think that we ended the season
Matching
3
minors.
minutes under the record for penalty minutes
Oh, is
in the
that
Big
right?
Ten.
Well, matching minors wouldn't get us there because
No, matching majors. We would need matching majors.
No,
in
this
baseball.
this Rico
Yeah.
Blase dude sounds like the coaching version of Ty Domi. Like he's out there trying to like that's his kind of presence. Am I off here? You
Well,
thinking that way?
he had a good program at Miami back
Yeah.
in the 90s, and Michigan was in the same conference when that was still a CCHA, and those games were pretty heated. Yeah, he's a fiery guy, to put it nicely.
He's always been very upfront that he wants his teams to be, quote, tough, right? And he wants them to be tough and physical. That's Blasi. And so I guess he wants his coaches to be the same. But, so in any event, yeah. And it isn't like, I mean, Josh Ernise was a big deal at St. Thomas. For Michigan, he's probably he's not going to be a superstar. Hopefully he'll be a good, solid player here.
You guys, and we only got a minute left, but you think that this is going to be a thing, though? Home ice, home venues for hockey, college sites venues for postseason hockey?
I hope so, but I don't see it happening just because most of the schools don't care and they like the advantages that come from being a 4th seed who can upset a 1 seed.
Yeah, I mean the Big Ten wants it. The Big Ten and Big Ten coaches definitely want it. But whether that's enough, I don't know. It wouldn't happen before. I think the earliest it can happen is 26, 27.
There are a lot of East schools. There's a lot of small East schools. They've been getting more of them. So like there have been more teams that have started hockey programs or come up to this level, and they're all that same kind of school where they're, in the East, it's better to play in one of these venues. You have a better shot of beating Michigan for one. You have a bigger they play in 2,000 seat arenas, right? So it's not a big deal for them to move a half an hour down the Catskills and play in front of a larger crowd.
Yeah, we got to get out of here. Great discussion as always. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, get on board with Brighton Ford, and pleased to announce the 2023 F-150 deals out at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. They're going on now. You can get into a 2023 F-150 for $359 a month with just $3,500 down, or $488 a month with $500 down. And last but not least, 2023 Edge, $253 a month with $3,500 down, or $376 a month with $500 down. Get on board with Brighton Ford by going to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. See you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports Ann Arbor, a Cumulus station.